Okay, so I recently bought Total War Warhammer because it was part of a pretty decent sale, so I figured I'd never get it for cheaper, so I snapped it up and it plays very differently to what I'm used to, of course. I've not played Warhammer before. It's very fast paced, of course, but hopefully with the addition of the new maps, a lot of the sieges will be better, because unfortunately the sieges do tend to be very samey. That's what I've heard and what I've noticed already in playing just a few of the basic siege battles. Also, I figured that I would learn to play one faction at a time just to sort of get a handle on it, and the Empire does certainly seem to be the all-round faction. They don't really seem to have many gaps in what they can do, so I figured the Empire would be a good place to start. Now, it's fair to say that I don't actually play a great deal with random players in Warhammer. Usually I get at least a few people that I know to play, and one of the reasons for that is stuff like this. Now, it's not as big a deal in Warhammer because of all the things you can do, but really camping up on a hill like this is just... it's not fun times. It really isn't. And so we're the attackers, obviously. Technically speaking, we're the attackers. I'm with an army of the Greenskins, or the Bloody Hands. And of course I'm an Empire player and we have another Empire. There are also two enemy Imperials. One of them is the Middenheim variant, and we're up against the Dwarves, so we'll go to regular speed. And charging up this hill is going to be a bit of a problem. The enemy have got a ton of steam tanks as well, some really strange armies that we're seeing from the enemy, really. They also have a ton of Hellstorm rocket batteries, so it's going to be real difficult to get up this hill. They've got all their spears. They also have a ton of Demigryph Knights with halberds, so we're going to be up against it here, it's fair to say. We could have parked up on this hill, but then it would have been a case of just staring at one another and then everyone would have left. So, the perils of online play. I do have a mortar, so I will be able to outrange them, but ultimately the mortar is not going to coax them off this hill. I should have brought more mortars if I wanted to do that. As for my army, well, I'm still getting used to how things work, but I have one unit of swordsmen. I do have a bunch of spears, just to be the cheap front line. I also have handgunners, and in the few games that I've played, handgunners seem to be one of my favourite units, just because of the amount of damage they can dish out very quickly. And of course I've got a regiment of renowned handgunners in the Silver Bullets. Very cool. And I also have cavalry of my own. They're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Demigryphs that they've got up round there, but they should be good against the infantry. I have 2 units of Reichsguard and 1 unit of the Zentler's Reichsguard, which is of course the more elite unit. They look incredibly cool as well. The unit models in this game are very, very nice. Nonetheless, we're deciding really how to attack this hill at this point, because obviously charging in is going to get us basically nowhere. Has a bunch of steam tanks going around here. The steam tanks are going to be difficult because you can't break them and they are very tough. We do have a decent number of handguns though. My allies got some handgunners as well, so we should be able to shoot them from a distance, and we could be able to crunch into them with the cavalry that we have. There is also an enemy unit back here, a vanguard deployed unit of, I believe this is the Zentler's Reichsguard as well. Yeah, it is. So obviously mirror match against other Empire players. There wasn't really any good position for me to hide my Zentler's Reichsguard without getting spotted around this hill, so I just put them in with the rest of my Reichsguard. Ally over here is getting ready to engage the steam tanks with his guns. They are able to shoot from a distance. They don't do a ton of damage from a distance, I've noticed, but, well, individually they don't. With 4 of them though, it's like having 4 cannons. But we are now getting ready to move in. I'm moving my spears up. Looks like I've got the very steep part of the hill here, so it's going to be very difficult. The Orcs have got some very nasty infantry. The Arachnarok Spider and the Black Orcs are going to be tough for just spears to stop, but these rocket batteries are going to soften them up pretty nicely on the approach. We also have some Outriders with grenade launchers, so it is going to be very challenging for us to dislodge them. We really should have brought more siege in order to prepare for this, but unfortunately all we really have is I brought a mortar, and I think that's pretty much it. So that's unfortunate, but the steam tanks are pretty far away from the main line, so hopefully we'll be able to soften them up with handguns and then maybe charge in with the Reichsguard. I'm also sending over my leadership So I've got my Empire Captain, 2 Empire Captains, and Karl Franz. I also have a Jade Wizard for the healing, because Karl Franz doesn't regenerate like quite a lot of other lords, so I decided that it would be best if I could heal him. Because he is very, very good in melee. His stats looked very, very impressive from what I could tell. We have the Doom Divers, so they will be able to do decent damage to the spears. So we do have a Doom Diver catapult, but 1 Doom Diver and 1 mortar is not going to be enough to overpower their Hellstorm rocket batteries. But I'm going to send in my Empire Captain on his Pegasus to try and disrupt these rocket batteries from Middenheim. It is a bit risky, of course, because there's a lot of spears around here and he could get bogged down pretty easily. He sent 1 guy flying. But now this should stop at least 1 of the batteries from firing. But the greenskins are really taking a bit of a pounding here with the rockets, and there's not really a great deal we can do about that. Karl Franz has also been committed, my Karl Franz anyway, and my Empire Captain, charging into the Outriders with grenade launchers. There are spears around here though, and now another Karl Franz is coming in. So it's complete chaos, and that's what the big team battles seem to be like in Warhammer. In my very limited experience thus far, it just tends to be a complete clusterfuck. But, you know, hopefully the newer maps will add a bit more structure. I did actually play a newer map called Topbringer's Encampment, but unfortunately the replay broke, so that's nice. And that was actually a very nice battle to have as well. It was very close. This one was reasonably close for a long time, but spoilers, we don't win because of the hill position ultimately, and because of how really it's the demigriffs in the end which really hurt us. They're going out and around and they are mopping up the Reichsguard from my ally pretty quickly. There goes a Foot of Gork. He would have been much better served hitting all of these demigriffs. Even with the friendly fire, the Foot of Gork should have been used on the demigriffs because it is an anti-cavalry spell if I'm not mistaken. That's one of my spells, I believe. One of my Jade Wizard spells, although the Jade Wizard isn't really particularly fantastic at using damage. Much more for the healing. The Arachnarok is getting stuck in. Down here I did deploy my cavalry just to try and... I did pull out though because I was using Karl Franz to try and finish off this 1 steam tank, and then I was going to use my handgunners to try and volley into the rest of these guys. But Karl Franz on Deathclaw is a very, very dangerous legendary lord on the charge, I've noticed already. He is very easy to waste though because he doesn't have any inbuilt healing, so you do need to keep the Jade Wizard on hand in order to heal him. We are actually managing to break through their first line, but their first line is just cheap spears, and all their infantry is really kind of... all the Imperial infantry they're up against anyway is very cheap and very nasty. The Dwarven infantry is where the quality comes in. There's Longbeards and there's Ironbreakers and there's Slayers in there somewhere as well. They also have cannons up on the hill. They're going to be very difficult to dislodge, but I think we could break the Imperial infantry reasonably quickly provided we overwhelm them, but it is difficult because of these steam tanks sat in the middle, and also the... oh, this lag. And also the demigriffs with halberds that are roaming all over the map. There's a bunch of reformed Reichsguard there. Meanwhile, my Reichsguard is committed. Well, it's around somewhere, but the greenskins continue to use their spells. But all thoughts of tactics really at this point are steadily starting to leave the minds of all the players, because once you're engaged it just tends to be who can out-muscle each other, it seems. And we do have the advantage on the front, but unfortunately we're going to be taking severe losses as we advance upwards, and the demigriffs with halberds are just going to peel away some of our most powerful units as we try to get up this hill. And there's not really a great deal we can do about that, because none of us really brought anything to deal with mass demigriffs, which is a bit of a shame. If I was able to get Karl Franz and the Empire Captains free, it would have been slightly easier, but I think that my Empire Captains, at least one of them is already dead from the demigriffs. But it's very difficult to deal with that much high quality cavalry. The steam tanks we are slowly starting to deal with, but unfortunately a demigriff with halberds charged into my silver bullets and my handgun line. So we're going to really start to struggle if we lose our ranged capabilities, because the handgun is an area where we can press the advantage a little bit. It doesn't seem like the Imperial players on the other side brought any handgunners. The dwarves did, however, bring some trollhammer torpedoes. Really, they went heavy on their siege and their cavalry, and at the moment it is working, because our infantry is struggling to get up the hill and break through their cheaper infantry. And the Hellstorm rocket batteries are absolutely ripping the greenskins to shreds. The Slayers are coming in now, so the Slayers will... Honestly, the Slayers shouldn't really go into the... Well, actually these are just swordsmen, so they will do alright, but the Slayers are good against armoured units. Actually, no, they're not good against armoured units, sorry. They're good against large units, so they should be used really against cavalry. The enemy Zentler's Reichsguard is charging on through. This is going... The balance of power is slightly in the enemy's favour, and we do have more troops, but ultimately the position they took up is very, very difficult to break down. Particularly when you're up against the dwarves, or dwarfs, I should say, because it makes it just super difficult to get through. Also, our Arachnarok Spider is starting to break, which is a big problem, because it is one thing that we really need to do damage, but it is going to die here because of the Trollhammer torpedoes. The Greatswords are going to crest the hill in a moment. The Middenheim units are still in the middle here, still getting in the way. And really, this was our big mistake. We never really were able to break through their cheaper infantry fast enough, which we really needed to do in order to get to where their real value was, which was in their spears. Not their spears, their siege. And then we could have put up a more concerted effort against the demigriffs. They also have some Knights of the Blazing Sun here, which are one of the coolest cavalry units in any strategy game I've ever seen. They look absolutely stunning. The demigriffs with halberds don't look half bad either. There they are. And they are just ripping through our army, because we don't really have much which can deal with them. They are a large unit, so really the only thing I have that's anti-large is my cheap spears. And they will not beat the demigriffs in melee, because, you know, their weapon damage, their base weapon damage is so low. And they still have their outriders with grenade launchers. But we are slowly starting to take this top part of the hill. But our ally over here, the fellow Empire player, is not doing well because the dwarves have taken up such a dominating position over them with the cannons. It's going to be very difficult. My Jade Wizard is all alone, cowering behind these Black Orcs. But the Black Orcs were really ripped apart by the Hellstorm rocket batteries, and there wasn't really a great deal we could do about that. It fell to us to attack, and we attacked in a way that was rather foolhardy in the end. Here we have the dwarves holding back my infantry. The Iron Breakers are very difficult to kill, especially seeing as most of my infantry here is just spears. I do have greatswords as well, but the greatswords alone are not going to be enough to break through all of this. It's going to be very challenging indeed. We have Wurzag still, and Wurzag is the greenskin general. Wurzag is a spellcaster general, however, so he's not like my general Karl, who is much more about just smashing through enemy lines. And really, Karl Franz is the unit which has been saving my army here, because I have been systematically breaking some of his units that have been engaging mine. But ultimately, my men are starting to run a little thin. They are starting to be broken down a bit. And these Trollhammer torpedoes are a real concern because of how much damage they can do. I am going to try and break his main line with Karl Franz, and it is working to an extent. His cheaper units are going, but his general will stay in combat. And now the demigriffs are on the way, so I need to get out of there because they are anti-large and they will rip Karl apart in melee, at least when he's on the ground. His charge bonus is really what makes him when he's on deathclaw. And the troll hammers are firing at him. It's not going particularly well. There are still quite a number of Black Orcs, and these demigriffs, they don't really want to be engaging the Black Orcs one at a time because of how dangerous they are. There's more enemies over here. It just seems like they have a limitless supply, whereas we are running low. The unit of Longbeards down here engaging some greatswords, depleted greatswords though, so the Longbeards should win that, I would imagine. Our ally's army over here is doing pretty badly now, though. Looks like he has been almost completely broken by demigriffs with halberds. I still have handgunners over here, and there are some night goblin archers, but really over here is where we were pinning all our hopes. And they are starting to pull back. We are starting to do some decent damage because of the amount of black orcs that are sort of starting to run about the dwarven front line, which does mean we'll be able to clean up these units over here. This Hellstorm rocket battery will be cleaned up by these greatswords. And Wurzag is over here hiding behind this boulder. Hopefully he'll be able to get some spells off and make it a little closer, but we are starting to lose ground now. The enemy troop count is still lower than ours, but their forces are considerably more elite and they have the advantage of position. But yeah, real baptism by fire this was, at least in terms of team battles and sort of how chaotic they can really be and how fast paced they can be, because a team battle of this size in Third Age, for example, would last considerably longer. Not that I'm complaining, this game is... neither one is better, they're just different to each other, at least that's what I'd say. I mean, I prefer Third Age at the moment, but I could learn to love this. Meanwhile, the demigriffs are still running amok. These greatswords are now getting into melee, and this is a pretty decently sized unit of greatswords, so they're going to rip through the miners without much problem. But now the dwarves are sort of turtling up, and I don't think we'll have the troops to break through as well. We won't, but how much damage we can do, really it depends on sort of engaging these Black Orcs one at a time is a mistake, especially with the General of the Empire and the demigriffs there. The Black Orcs are tough, but they're not that tough. Meanwhile, my greatswords are still bogged down in this cannon. I can't get my infantry over to support quickly enough, and the orcs are starting to break. Karl Franz, meanwhile, is still charging into important targets. He's done a decent job, Karl, but ultimately, it doesn't look like we're going to get much else done. Where's the music gone? How odd. Quality Sega product, nonetheless. Karl Franz is now charging around, and he's going to charge into the General of the Empire, but ultimately, even if I kill the General of the Empire, it doesn't really matter because the Middenheim army is largely gone. Really, it's the dwarf player which is left, but he has a significant amount of troops left, whereas both me and the greenskin player, we don't really have much left. I do have these handgunners who could potentially do a decent damage. I'm trying to damage Karl Franz over here, but really it's not going to go too well because, you know, the Iron Breakers are here and we don't have the muscle to break through the Iron Breakers at this point, and they still have their forces, and then our army, of course, broke. But there it is, a valiant defeat. And really, my Empire captains died a little early. I did waste them. I do need to get a lot better at using my leaders because they are very powerful, but if you lose them, your army starts to waver, and that is a problem. We didn't do a good job against these steam tanks. These Hellstorm rocket batteries got so many kills, and so did the General of the Empire in amongst the cheaper orc and spear units. But yeah, my greatswords did a decent job. My handgunners did not. They were up against, to be fair, most of their volleys were against steam tanks, and they did, of course, get charged by demigriffs, which led to them really never recovering. My mortar got a decent amount of kills as well. My Reichsguard, I wasted them as well. I just need to get better, and yeah, that's a fact. But I do like the way the Empire plays. They do have a lot of options, and I do like how they have... Personally, I think that the skirmishers, the wizards, and the cavalry are where the Empires are slightly better. But nonetheless, I will, of course, endeavour to improve my play. But that was my first Warhammer video. Not really a well-informed person when it comes to Warhammer, so my commentary may be a little bit jittery, but hopefully I'll be able to play some custom maps because that's what I really want to play. Less of this barely organised chaos and more of the custom maps, and that should be fun times. But until then,